Hello and welcome to Broadway Baptist Church, Derby. As we begin, the psalmist exhorts us to praise the name of the Lord from the rising to the setting of the sun, while calling us to witness how God raises the poor and needy from the dust. Do not trust in the idols of silver and gold, says the psalmist, but trust in God alone. Well, today marks the beginning of Fair Trade Fortnight, as we worship the God who shows a preferential option for the widow, for the enslaved, for the oppressed, and for those stuck in prisons of debt. So we come with faith and with determination, setting aside all fear, all anxiety, and even demands to solve the world's problems on our own. We come expecting to meet the living God in the person of Jesus through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit as we sing together our opening hymn, I Dream of a Church.
I dream of a church that awakens God's vision of a people who live without counting the cost, that trust in the Spirit of Christ Jesus' mission to uplift the oppressed with good news for the lost. I pray for a church that joins in with God's prancing in a swirling star skirt made from light cosmic sky, like prophets of old who lead people by dancing, unafraid of the pharaohs enthroned up on high. We sing in a church that cracks up with God's laughter, that rejoices in justice and shares all for free, turns over the tables of money's disaster, an abundance of mirth in a new jubilee. We work for a church that connects through Christ's caring, as she shelters and loves the unloved refugee. A church that shines light on corruption, then daring to forgive and embrace them in God's family. Dear God, would you make us a people like Jesus, with his trust in your kingdom of unfailing grace, a traveling band of peculiar people on the journey towards joy and a true life in this place.
Listen to these words from Micah 6. Hear what the Lord says. Rise, plead your case before the mountains, and let the hills hear your voice. O my people, what have I done to you? How have I wearied you? Answer me. For I brought you up from the land of Egypt, and redeemed you from the house of slavery. I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before the Most High? Shall I come before the Lord with burnt offerings? Has not the Most High told you, O mortal, what is good and what the Lord requires of you? Surely that is to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. Now again, listen to these verses from Matthew 5, verses 43 to 48. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbour and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of our Creator in heaven. God causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be whole, therefore, as your heavenly Father is whole. Well, this year, Fairtrade are focusing on the theme, Choose the World You Want, and particularly the effects of climate change on farmers around the world. So let's watch a video about that now.
Across the globe, millions of farmers are on the front line of climate change.
Que el tiempo a veces está un poco loco, ¿no? Cuando debe llover, no llueve. Y cuando no debe llover, llueve.
Many are already living on the edge.
ഇപ്പോഴുള്ള കൃഷിക്കാർ വയ്യാതാകുന്ന പ്രായം എത്തുന്ന ഒരു സാഹചര്യം വരുമ്പോൾ തുടർന്ന് കാർഷിക മേഖലയിൽ ആളില്ലാത്ത ഒരു സ്ഥിതിയിലേക്ക് കേരളം എത്തിപ്പെടുന്ന സ്ഥിതി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു.
Rising temperatures, declining rainfall and crop failure are a daily reality.
It is struggling, so new tea here will just dry and the production is very poor.
Extreme weather events intensified by climate change can wipe out farmers' crops, leaving them with nothing. Regions where coffee, cocoa, sugar, tea and wine are produced are increasingly at risk.
Por consecuencia de la roya, he perdido mi planta, porque mi planta cada año me daba, pues, me recoge, lo único era para vivir.
Fairtrade supports farmers and businesses to tackle the impacts of climate change.
Eso es la causa por el cambio climático, es lo que yo he diversificado, porque el café da menos, entonces ya el cacao. No solo siembro café, sino cacao, plátanos, yuca.
Farmers decide on projects to improve their land and environment and use natural resources more efficiently.
ಅವಾಗ ಈ ಒಲೆಗಳಿದ್ದು ನಮಗೆ ಅವಾಗ 4 ಒಲೆ ಇಡ್ತಿದ್ವಿ ಇಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ 4 ಒಲೆಗಳು ಇಡ್ತಿದ್ವಿ ಅಂದರೆ ಒಲೆ ಹಚ್ಚಿದಗಳೇ ಬೇಗ ಆರೋಗ್ತಿದ್ವು ಹಾಗೆ ಒಲೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಮನೆಯೆಲ್ಲ ಹೊಗೆ ಮುಚ್ಚಿ ನಮಗೆ ಕಣ್ಣು ಉರಿಯೋದು ಮತ್ತೆ.
Se encuentra fresco, trae agua, el mismo árbol. Ha cambiado bastante de plantas, todos están esos cerros con florestales, con bosques.
The Fairtrade Climate Academy teaches farmers how to cope with climate change.
The idea here is to train farmers to become more resilient, to become better businesses. So we're doing a training of trainers where we have lead farmers coming in to learn so that they can also go and teach other farmers.
Fairtrade is exploring new options for climate risk insurance to protect small-scale farmers against loss or damage caused by extreme weather. Fairtrade, building climate resilience for farmers and their communities.
Let us pray. Creator God, we look around our world. We can see our homes in the city, and in them and around them we can marvel at the beauty of your creation if we just open our eyes. Through the wonders of digital technology, we can see the wonders far from us too, and the ecosystems living in it. Yet we are also the ones who have caused chaos and harm to these beautiful places and to flora and fauna within them. Give us eyes that see beyond the beauty. You have given us enough land to feed our populations, yet many go hungry. You have given us wealth, yet we are often slow to share. You have given us the ability to look outwards and to see where others need help. but often we only look at our own lives. Forgive us, Lord, when we do not open our eyes, and when, as a parent, we make your heart sad at our selfish nature. Touch our eyes afresh today and enable us to see what you have created. Help us nurture and care for all that lives on this beautiful planet we call home. Help us to seek always for justice and fairness, for places and people, and to make this world a better place. Amen. Well, we continue in prayer in our next hymn, God, the Maker of the Heavens. Help us to live like Jesus and reveal your kingdom.
At the end of a tempestuous week, we pray together in prayers of intercession. Lord Jesus, we turn to you again for peace. Perhaps for some the words of an old hymn have echoed through recent days. Master, the tempest is raging, the billows are tossing high, the sky is overshadowed with blackness, no shelter or help is nigh. Carest thou not that we perish? How canst thou lie asleep when each moment so madly is threatening a grave in the angry deep? Well, if so, we shall surely have also recalled the chorus following each challenging verse. The winds and the waves will obey my will. Peace, peace, be still. Whether the wrath of the storm-tossed sea, or demons, or men, or whatever it be, no water can swallow the ship where lies the master of ocean and earth and skies. They all shall sweetly obey my will. Peace, be still. They all shall sweetly obey my will. Peace, peace, be still. Remind us again, O Lord, that even when the storms of life threaten to overwhelm us, you are there with us, experiencing all that we are, but for our fear, and with the power to respond at once, to bring calm and order once again. How will you do this? We don't know, any more than the disciples knew how you calmed mountainous waves with a single word. We simply ask for the faith to know that you can and will. And so when inflation threatens to swamp us, when conspiracy theories batter us, when moral corruption surrounds us, and when the heavy thunderclouds of war loom over us, tell us again that with Christ in the boat we may smile at the storm. In the words of the psalmist, teach us to wait patiently for our Lord, knowing that you will turn to us and hear our cry. Lift us out of the mud and mire, the waters that threaten to overwhelm us, and set our feet again on a rock, and give us a firm place to stand. Then put a new song in our mouths, a hymn of praise on our lips, that many will see and in awe and wonder put their trust in the Lord our God. Amen.
In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought His body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, sin's curse has lost its grip on me, for I am his and he is mine, bought with the precious blood of Christ. No guilt in life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand, till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand.
Well, this morning we have considered what we can do to make a better, fairer world. We can keep ourselves very busy in making sure we do too, sometimes to the point of exhaustion. So if we can do so much, a question to ponder: why pray? In fact, when do you pray? Why do you pray? How do you pray? Take a moment to think about it. If it's helpful, jot a note down, chat with someone if you're watching with them. We open up Mark's Gospel this week in chapter 6, and if you want action for a better world, we certainly see it here. But it is a chapter of ups and downs. I encourage you to read this chapter in your own time, but briefly, it starts with the down, as Jesus was rejected by his hometown Nazareth, and their lack of faith. Then things begin to pick up. In verse 6 we read, "Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village. Calling the 12 to him, he began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over impure spirits." We've heard this before. Back in chapter 3, Jesus called those he wanted. He appointed the 12 that they might be with him and that he might send them out to preach. Well, the disciples have been with him and seen him do great things, but now it is their turn to be sent by him, travelling light with nothing for the journey, but to accept the hospitality that is offered, a test of trust in what Jesus has enabled them to do. Then there's the down of the horrific death of John the Baptist at the request of a child to a likely drunk king at his banquet. There's no time to dwell on this though. In verse 30, there's an up. The disciples are back and reporting to Jesus all that they had done and taught. But it was so busy with people they had no chance to eat. So Jesus invites them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Having been sent by him, it was time to return to be with him. There's another boat journey, and in verse 34 we read, "When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things." Then there's another up. Jesus feeds the 5,000. Nothing has been seen like this since the days of Moses in the wilderness, when manna appeared each day to feed the nation. Here is another sign that Jesus is Lord over creation, that he is the Messiah sent to save. It is phenomenal, the highest point of his ministry so far. These are huge ups and downs. How do you react when life goes up and down? Are you one of those who are able to remain constant, or do your moods yo-yo with the circumstances? Many people's moods are affected by what's going on around them. It's natural. But look at how Jesus responds to his long day. In verse 45 we read, Jesus immediately sent his disciples into the boat ahead to Bethsaida, and while he dismisses the crowd, after he has dismissed them, he goes up to a mountainside to pray. It could have been a euphoric day that deserved celebration, but Jesus' response is to pray. Mark speaks of Jesus in prayer less than the other Gospels. He is much more about action, so when he does mention it, we need to pay attention. The first time we read of it is right back in chapter 1 at the beginning of Jesus' ministry in Capernaum. And it seemed the whole town came flocking to the door for Jesus to heal. We read in verse 35, very early the following morning, Jesus got up, left the house, and went to a solitary place to pray. By the time Simon and the others found him, he already knew that he had to move on to other villages. It could have been so easy to allow the circumstances of a ministry going well to keep him fixed in one place. But his focus was not what was going on around him, but what he was called to do. He had a deep sense of purpose that was rooted in relationship with the Father, and so he could keep focused and know that to stay around, where Peter's mother-in-law would no doubt have been happy to continue to wait on them, all was not what Jesus was about. The next time we see him in prayer is this passage we are looking at today. The temptation to succumb to success, to enjoy with the disciples what they were learning, or to be rocked by the death of John the Baptist, to be locked in negative messages of rejection from Nazareth is huge. Any one of these could be one of life's storms, sending him up or down. But Jesus doesn't do either. Once he sent those disciples away, again he seeks solitude to be in prayer. It seems he is away in prayer for a number of hours. Then the third time we read of Jesus is in prayer is after the Last Supper in the Garden of Gethsemane, where he took Peter, James and John with him, but they kept falling asleep. Jesus was earnest in prayer with the cross in front of him. He sought the presence of his Father. We'll return to this closer to Easter, but what we see is that Jesus draws strength in prayer. The three occasions that Mark records of Jesus in prayer are each at significant points when he could be distracted from his focus or overwhelmed by the enormity of the task ahead. But Jesus isn't distracted. Prayer for him, it seems to me, is where Jesus is grounded, re-energized, and refocused. For years, I wondered how Jesus prayed through the night. How could he find enough words to say to the Father, things to pray about? To be honest, it put me off prayer. It was something to attain to do, to achieve. It took me a long time to realize it was my limited understanding of prayer that was the problem. I was used to liturgical services and prayer meetings where everything was spoken out and having prayer lists. Until I discovered there were other ways of communicating with God as well. And it occurs to me that prayer is a lot like the stages of growing up. Children, for example, are more than happy to be with those they love. There is joy in being cuddled and had a story read, a game, a walk to splash in the puddles or play on the swings. Actually, it doesn't matter so much what they do as who they do it with. The joy comes in sharing these moments with people they love and chatting about it. And let's face it, some children are incessant chatterers. Yet Jesus said the kingdom belongs to such as these. A simple trust, not weighed down by theories and thoughts. It's the freedom to be in the moment. That's the prayer of new faith, young faith when it is vibrant. Then comes adolescence. Well, if you've lived with teenagers, you'll be aware of the great withdrawal. Except, of course, when they want something. Money, a lift, perhaps a problem to fathom. But once they've got what they want, many adolescents then withdraw, wanting to go about their lives in their own ways, thinking they know it all, believing they don't really need their parents anymore, not realizing just how much they are still dependent. And as a parent, you don't love them any less, but you know there is so much more that could be in the relationship, and you long for more than the brief exchanges that happen before you get shut out of their lives again. Compare that to the relationships that evolve over many years, whether it's friends or spouses. There is an ease of being together that doesn't need you to fill the air with words, nor do you have to do anything in particular, though there are occasions to be enjoyed together. There are times of joy and times of sorrow that can be shared in a wonderful depth of silence. It's a beautiful quality that cannot be hurried. It evolves slowly. Well, I suspect that when Jesus prayed through the night, when he sought the Father at times of testing and trial, alongside the deep sharing, there was probably a lot of silence. Prayer was about being one with the Father, and this depth of prayer enabled Jesus to be grounded in who he was, in how the Father had called him to be. And so, when the storms of life came, Jesus was not shaken. When adulation came, his head wasn't turned, because he knew what was in the hearts of people, their mixed motivations. Being grounded in prayer enabled him to know deeply that he was the beloved, and no circumstances could change that. Being grounded in prayer enabled him to keep his focus on why he came, not to be distracted from it by the demands of others, nor by the distractions of life. Communion with the Father kept him grounded in his identity and purpose. I wonder, when it comes to our prayer, whether we can get stuck in adolescence. We try and do life in our own strength. We come to God with varying degrees of frequency, and we bring our requests, and then do we withdraw and get on with life until the next time we bring a request to him, not realizing just how dependent we are on him? God loves us. I'm sure he loves it when we come to him. But does it ever cause him sadness that we dash in and dash out again, calling later over our shoulder, because he knows we could be experiencing more? As Jesus said to the disciples after their busy ministry, so he says to us, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." We could all do with some rest that rejuvenates the deepest parts. Of course, different circumstances demand different types of prayer. If you did the prayer course 2 years ago that we started on a Sunday night and finished online, we thought about lots of different ways of praying. But as you think about it, roughly, what stage of life would you put yourself at with your prayer? How would you like to develop? David Fleming, who preached for us last summer, shared a picture that had come out of his church prayer meeting this week. Now, this is not a church that is prone to prophetic pictures, but there was this sense as the church was praying that the last 2 years have been really hard. Many of the things that mattered deeply to them, gathering for worship, fellowship, praying together, mission and evangelism, building community, have been really challenging, and from time to time have had to be put on hold. Well, the image shared was that of a fireplace with the fire in the grate barely burning. And they felt that they have emerged from the past 2 years with the structure, that's the fireplace, intact, but the fire diminished. The structure is the program of the church, the groups, the buildings, etc. The fire is the spiritual life. And as the prayer meeting went on, it seemed that reviving the structure would be comparatively easy. Building the fire, though, would be harder. but ought to be a priority in prayer. I wonder if such a picture resonates with you. As I said the other week, Pete Scazzero puts this question: is our being with Jesus enough to sustain our doing for Jesus? How might we move forward from here? I encourage you to take a minute or two to be silent with God. Maybe you want to pause the video. Well, our last song reminds us that wherever we are in life, however we are held by the everlasting arms.
He lavishes grace as our burdens grow greater. He sends us more strength as our labors increase. To added afflictions He offers more mercy. To multiply trials He multiplies peace. When we have exhausted our store of endurance, when our strength is failed and the day is half done, when we've reached the end of our earthly resources, the Father's forgiving is only begun. The Father's forgiving is only begun. So lean hard, lean on the everlasting arms. Lean hard, lean on the everlasting arms. Lean on the everlasting arms. We lean on You today, Lord. His love has no limits, His grace has no measure, His power has no boundary that's known unto men. For out of His infinite riches in Jesus, He giveth and giveth and giveth again. He giveth and giveth and giveth again. So lean hard, lean on the everlasting arms. Lean hard, lean on the everlasting arms. Lean on the everlasting arms. 'Cause You lead me beside still waters. Your goodness restores my soul. I know that You'll never leave me. I know that You won't let go. You lead me beside still waters. Your goodness restores my soul. I know that You'll never leave me. I know that You won't let go. Won't let go. No, no. So lean hard, lean on the everlasting arms. Lean hard, lean on the everlasting arms. Lean on the everlasting arms. Lean on the everlasting arms. Your mercy flows, Lord. Oh, we lean on You, Lord. We lean on You again today. Your mercy flows like a river on us. Your mercy flows. Your mercy flows like a river. Your mercy flows like a river
As we come to a close now, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. God bless. And if you would like to be in touch, we would love to hear from you.
Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart. Not be all and truly, save that thou waking or sleeping, Christ be with you. Christ within you. Christ behind you. Christ before you. Christ beside you. Christ to win you. Christ to comfort and restore you. Christ beneath you. Christ above you. Christ in quiet. Christ in danger. Christ in heart of all that love you. Christ in love of friend and stranger.
Go mani and cheerna hu, agus go goody she hu.
The Lord met the light of his face, and the goodness of his heart, to be brecht upon you.
The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.
The Lord bless you
And keep you,
The Lord make his face
to shine upon you
and be gracious to you.
The Lord lift up his countenance upon you
and give you peace.
يباركك الرب ويحرسك.
Niech się Pan błogosławi i strzeże.
Facă să lumineze fața lui peste
Yehova, തിരുമുഖം നിന്റെ മേൽ ഉയർത്തി നിനക്ക് സമാധാനം.
Kosi fuini alafia.